name's Danielle Chitty, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about crushing your technical resume. A little bit about myself. I work with Robert Half Technology, so I see a lot of resumes, and I talk to a lot of hiring managers in the technical space, and some of you might have really great resumes, and some of you might not, and it might be time to dust it off. So we'll, gosh, it tells you on it up there. I mean, we'll talk a little bit today about those resumes, maybe. Anybody else know how to make this how it's supposed to be? Oh, there it goes. Okay, cool. Doesn't look like that on mine, but that's fine. Okay, so 5 rules of a strong resume. 1, it's customized. Looking at the job that you're applying for and actually making it relevant. 2, proofreading carefully and looking for typos and grammar aspects. Focusing on your accomplishments, not your job duties. That's a really big area. And we'll get into all of these more. Brief and to the point and reflects you at your personal best. So Robert Half, we do a lot of surveys when it comes to hiring managers, and this was a recent survey that we did that had about 2,200 hiring managers, and talked about common mistakes that people make on their applications. And obviously, you can see the biggest one being not customizing the resume to the actual position. Some other ones in there, which I obviously are just as important and echo those 5 rules, would be grammar, including your relevant information, and looking at your accomplishments and not just your job duties. So first off, getting into format. Pretty simple: your name, your phone, your email, and a GitHub if you have one. If you don't, I highly recommend as a developer that you start to put all your code out there in a repository. Make sure that your email's neutral and professional. Simple name, we all have work emails, most of us, versus I love babybackribs@email.com. You'd be surprised how many people don't have professional emails. It's really easy, you guys just go out, get a Gmail, something like that. The other thing, obviously, that's missing up here, address. It's not really relevant anymore. It used to be, but nowadays, everybody's going to get a hold of you via your cell or your email. Then you should get into your intro and summary aspects, looking at your skills, and going into your job history. Job history should be chronological. You want to start with your current role at the top, and then work your way backwards. So first we have the intro summary. This is basically your first impression. I have a couple of different examples here. Both of them I think are relevant and okay to do. But you want it straight and to the point. You don't want it too long. Obviously, these look a little longer because they're condensed with the margins. But hit those high levels of the position that you're looking for and why you feel like you'd be a good fit for it. And you can do a simple paragraph or some bullet points. Next, getting into the skills. I think this part's really important when you're working with somebody or when you're a developer and you're looking for a job. You can do this in a couple of different ways. I like it when it breaks down, what you've worked on in the front end and the back end, the specific languages and development tools. You can do a grid. You can do different ways to present all that info, but ultimately, it's that high-level stuff. Make sure you're putting things on there that you've actually worked with in a professional capacity or can actually represent and talk about. You don't want to put something on there just because you dabbled with it a little bit online on some Code Academy or whatnot. You should feel pretty proficient in it and able to talk about it. Next, getting into job history and your content. Like I mentioned before, you want to tailor your resume to the opportunity. I know it sounds like a pain in the butt, but honestly, it's really going to help, especially depending on the company and if there's specific experience that you can apply to it. Make sure when you're going through your job history, a good way to not do too much is to do, just a short overview, a couple sentences, and then some bullet points beneath it with your most important achievements, accomplishments, things like that you've done within the job. You want to focus on, within those bullet points, focus on areas that included problem solving and how you went about it. That's one thing that I'd say a lot of managers will push back about, is that you just have a list of job duties as opposed to things that you've actually gone through, you've done, and I like to tell people it's okay to brag about yourself a little bit. That's kind of, what these areas are for. Demonstrating how and why, that echoes the accomplishments aspects, especially in technology. There's not every answer, not every problem has the same answer. You can solve it in multiple different ways. So, a little bit on why you took that approach and being able to actually talk about it in depth. Pick a few projects out there, those high-level ones, again, that you want to brag about. Tools and technologies, this should go back to that first part that talks about your skills, but putting in there the languages and the tools and whatnot that you used. That can even be like a third bullet point or a fourth, or just kind of that, again, that high level of what's applicable to this certain job. Value added and ROI. A lot of people in business want to see what value you've added, what money you've saved, what time you've saved, what, even if it's headcount people, anything that you can materialize into numbers and or money will look good to a lot of people that are in a hiring position. If you don't know exactly, talk to some of your teammates, or just, sit back and think, well, if I'm automating this process, that means that, the person who was doing it saves X amount of hours a day or whatever, a week, and, try to total that up. It'll help out a bunch. Another thing would be your keywords, incorporating terms from the job description, especially nowadays when, unless you're working through a recruiter, we're able to kind of help out and highlight those areas. But if you're applying to jobs online, using the terms within the job description are going to help with that automated process and that application black hole that happens a lot of time with online applications. All right, link. This is a question I get a lot. I'd say there's no hard and fast rule for it. It should reflect the depth of your experience. So if you've been in the industry for years, having a one-page resume just isn't going to be sufficient. It shouldn't gloss over the important parts of your experience. I'd say like 2 to 3 pages is pretty good. If you're moving into 5, 6, 7 pages, maybe take a step back, see what's relevant. As a hiring manager and somebody in HR, a recruiter, most people aren't going to go 5, 6 pages back into your resume. Just make sure you're staying relevant. And if your experience is no longer relevant, it's probably best to leave it off. I see this as well with technology that might be a little older, a little more legacy. Unless it's something really impressive, it's probably not going to be applicable to the job. And if you don't have a ton of experience, you don't want to appear more qualified than you actually are. I know it's hard getting into your first job and trying to talk about what you've done, but you don't feel obligated to fill a whole page. And then the other stuff. So your accomplishments, your certifications, if you have any awards, things like that, list those towards the bottom. Education, whether it's a degree, if you did certain trainings that you went to through your job, if you've completed code camps, or I know that they do a lot of code camps here, things like that you can definitely list on there. References, leave them off. Just put under there, references available upon request. Make sure that you have some references ready if they ask for that, but you don't necessarily need to be putting names out there, and that's a perfectly acceptable way to do it. The other part, clear the clutter. You want to leave your personal information off that has little or no relevance. Hobbies, children, if it's not in a professional aspect, if it's volunteering here or doing something in that kind of a regard, yeah, put that kind of stuff on there. But if it's not geared towards technology in your professional pursuits, leave it off. And like I said before, ask yourself, does this add value to your resume? Errors and typos, I thought this was interesting. Another Robert Half survey over 300 senior managers, said 63% of them said 1 to 2 resume mistakes would eliminate an applicant from consideration. So we all have friends. Have your friend, check over your resume. I know that it can be kind of, a lot of people might hesitate, putting their resume in front of somebody else and want to hear the feedback from it. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but take that and actually, edit it and make sure that what you're submitting doesn't have typos and errors. And then cover letter. This is another question that we get. As a recruiter, I'll be honest, I don't do much with cover letters. I'm looking more at your most recent experience and what you've done in the job there, and talking to you about specifics of the things that you've worked on. But when it comes to if you've had a layoff, if you've had a gap in your employment or a career change, those are good things that you can address in a cover letter and make sure that you're professional about it. And that's it. Do you guys have any questions? Yep.
Does this work? Yeah, so as far as resumes, one question I always have is paragraph format better or like bullet points?
So what personally I like to see, and everybody's a little bit different, but I like to see a couple of sentences about the high level of what that job is, what you came in to do, what your day-to-day is, and then doing a couple of bullet points after that as far as, like I mentioned, the technology that you actually worked with, some of the high-level projects that you worked on and accomplished, and some of that value-added ROI. Anything else? All right, well, if you have anything else that you think of, I am on the Techlahoma Slack. It's not the best way to get a hold of me, but I'll try my best to keep up with it. You can also find me on LinkedIn, or feel free to email me.